In this video, we are going to be talking about food webs. This is standard 6.L.2.1. This standard is on summarizing how energy derived from the sun is used by plants to produce sugars through the process of photosynthesis and how it's transferred within a food chain or food web, both terrestrial on land and aquatic, meaning in the water, from producers to consumers to decomposers. Here are all of our objectives. And here are our essential questions. Our I can statements are also located on this page. Alright, let's go ahead and start by taking notes. So our first vocabulary word for today is a producer. These are organisms that make their own food. For example, here's a picture of a tree. Some other producers would include grasses, shrubs, and any other plants. Next vocabulary word to jot down in your notebook is a consumer. These are organisms that need to eat in order to get energy. For example, humans and other animals. An herbivore is an animal that eats plants. So these would include deer, giraffes, or other animals that only eat plants. Okay, so what is a food web? This is basically a network of food chains that have some things in common. So in the food web to the right-hand side, we can see some of the different food webs that are taking place. So as with food chains, arrows represent the energy flow from one organism to another. Can you go ahead and name 3 different food chains in this food web? Okay, as a hint, we know that the energy from carrots are going to the rabbits, and that's going to the foxes if we follow the arrows. Okay, another food chain would be, you can fill in the blank here. Blank goes to the grasshoppers, and their energy goes in turn to the owls. Okay, so we know that the grains come before the grasshoppers. That's where that arrow is pointing from. And then the third food chain says grains go to the mice, which also go to the foxes. So here are 3 possible food chains in the diagram to the right. Okay, next question on here. Do you think the hawk is a consumer or a producer? So we know that the grass at the very top of the chain is a producer. So that means it's giving its energy to the grasshopper, which is also giving its energy to the mice, which is in turn giving its energy to the snakes and the hawks. So that means that the hawk is a consumer. Okay, how about this food chain? This is an example of an ocean biome. Do you think the starfish in this case would be considered a producer or consumer? Right, so the starfish would be a producer in this case. It's lending its energy to the krill, the fish, the sea lion, and then finally the shark. Okay, our next vocabulary term is an omnivore. This is an animal that eats both plants and animals. So for example, a bear. A carnivore is an animal that eats other animals. Lions would be considered a carnivore. Okay, next vocabulary word is decomposer. This is an organism that breaks down dead plants and animals. For example, worms and fungi such as mushrooms do this. Okay, next page of Cornell notes. We're going to be working on classifying animals. So food webs can tell us which animals are predators, prey, or both. The predator is the animal that's doing the eating, and the prey is the animal that's being eaten. Okay, so which are the predators in this food web? Right, so the foxes, owls, and the birds are at the very top of the food chain, so they are the predators. Okay, and which are the prey in this diagram? Right, so the prey would include rabbits, mice, and grasshoppers. Okay, let's look at a question now to review. Some food chains are shown. In which food chain is the mushroom best shown as a decomposer? Take a moment to reflect and jot down your answer. Okay, good. So if you said choice A, you would be correct. So energy from the sun is going to the tree, and then after that, that energy is being decomposed by the mushroom. Next question. Jackie learned that animals compete with each other for resources to stay alive. She studied a food web of organisms that live in a marsh. Which organisms are competing with each other for the same food source? Is it A, B, C, or D? Okay, if you said the hawk and the snake, you would be correct. So they are the predators that are on the top of this food chain. B is incorrect because the cricket and the frog are on different levels. The snake and the cricket are also on different levels, and the shrew and the grasshopper. That does not apply either because they're also on different levels of the web. Okay, next up we're going to look at our next standard. So we want to understand that in any particular environment, the growth and survival of organisms depend on the physical condition. Here are all of our vocabulary terms. Okay, let's start off by drawing a Venn diagram and then labeling the predator, prey, or if there are any other animals that qualify as both. You can draw a similar picture of a Venn diagram in your notebook. So in this case, the predator would include the foxes, owls, and birds, and the prey would include the rabbits, mice, and grasshoppers. Okay, so let's go ahead and describe the difference between a food chain and a food web now. So we know that a food chain is just one path of energy, and in a food web, everything is connected. So in a food web, there can be multiple food chains taking place. A food web is generally more complicated and more intricate than just one single food chain. Okay, let's take a look at this next question. Some of the parts of a bay ecosystem are shown below. Sunlight entering the bay becomes blocked by swell flowing into the water. How will the blocked sunlight most likely affect the bay ecosystem? Is it A, the volume of water will decrease? B, the amount of sea grass will decrease? C, the number of sea turtles will increase? Or D, the number of tiger sharks will increase? Take a moment to jot down the answer that you think is correct. Okay, good. So everyone should have gotten choice B. The amount of seagrass will decrease. Again, if there is a decrease in sunlight, that means that there would be a decrease in the starting products or in the starting reactants of photosynthesis. So that means that less seagrass would be able to grow as a result. Okay, now let's define limiting factors. So this is any resource that restricts or limits the growth of a population. So for example, if forests get more rainfall when it is warmer in the summer, then it can support organisms better in the summer. So in this case, rain would be the limiting factor. If we had more rain, we would get bigger populations. If there is less rain, there would be smaller populations. Okay, so next let's look at how energy transfers within this pyramid. We know that when one organism eats another organism, only some of the energy transfers. So therefore, energy is lost as you move up a food chain. So therefore, the plants or the producers on the bottom tier of the pyramid have the most energy. Okay, after that, a little bit of energy is lost as we go up to the primary consumer level, or the insects in this case. More energy is lost as we go up to the secondary consumer, which are the frogs in this case. And then finally, there is the least energy in the tertiary consumer, or the hawks, which are the predators in this scenario. This next question says, Greg was studying a forest ecosystem. He placed some of the animals he studied in an energy pyramid. Based on Greg's energy pyramid, which organisms contain the most energy? Is it A, the wolves, B, the weasels, C, the beetles, or D, the trees? Take a moment to jot down your answer. If you answered D, the trees, that would be correct. So we know that the bottom tier of the pyramid, that level has the most energy. And in this case, that would be the producers, or the trees. Okay, next let's look at what role does bacteria play in the ecosystem. So we know that bacteria are decomposers which break down material and recycle it. They can also be producers, making food from sunlight, such as photosynthetic bacteria. Let's do another check for understanding question. So this question says that Bernice studied some organisms that live together in a field. In which way is a rabbit similar to the plant it eats? Is it A, they both need energy to survive, B, they both consume other organisms, C, they both absorb water from the ground, or D, they both produce their own food from sunlight? Take a moment to write down your answer again. Right, so if you got A, that would be right. They both need energy to survive. So the plant gets its energy from the sun, and the rabbit gets its energy from the grass, or from the plant. Okay, congrats. That's a wrap on food webs. We'll see you in the next video.